let's get into the big topic of open source, something that we actually say at Red Hat.
We haven't.
This is so
we
awesome.
are an open culture that believes
actually
in
a big
employee
piece
What is that process that a developer, or let's say
as the Kubernetes ecosystem really boomed?
Hello and welcome to this week's Ask an OpenShift Admin Office Hours live stream. I am Andrew Sullivan, joined as always by Mr. Jonny Rickard. Happy Wednesday, sir. Happy Wednesday.
It's a Wednesday for sure.
It's,
and I'm happy to be here, but it's Wednesday.
I felt like, and was it you I was talking to this morning? I was talking to somebody. It's like Wednesday just snuck up on me this week.
Yes.
And like for me, and I think most folks know that I'm in the Raleigh, North Carolina area, right? And so we had Hurricane Helene come through last weekend. I have a ton of family out in the mountains. They're all fine. Lots of flooding and all of that stuff out there. But everything was disrupted because of that. Like I had, my sister was in town because they have no power or anything, and like all of this other stuff. And so this week has just felt weird.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think it was you this morning. Like you sent me a message this morning. I'm like, all right, it's Wednesday. We're gonna stream.
Yeah, dude. I since I woke up today, I've been in the mindset that it is Tuesday. Like nothing could have changed that until I looked at the calendar, like the little clock display on my machine. I was like, oh my God, it's Wednesday.
But it is. It's a good day. It's a good day, right? We get to be here on the stream. We get to interact with our lovely and amazing audience. Hello, our Hope 9, and good morning to you. It's good to see you again. I do genuinely, even after 4 years? Yeah, it's been about 4 years since we started doing this. I do genuinely look forward to this. This is sometimes the highlight of my week. I say sometimes because sometimes I get to have really cool customer conversations and stuff like that. And I used to say that. The field folks, the Red Hat field folks, when I'd go and do presentations with them and stuff, and it was, 30 or 60 minutes of stump the chump were often my most difficult conversations, most difficult meetings. This one is the exact opposite.
Yeah.
I always get a blast, or have a blast doing these. So anyways.
Me too. Enough
rambling and all that other stuff. Today is a special episode because it's the Jonny show. So we are we're putting Jonny on the spot. He's in charge of content and demos, and I assume that the appropriate sacrifices of caffeine and all of that have been made in order to ensure everything works appropriately. We're going to hope that I don't get kicked out of the meeting room that I hijacked here in Red Hat Tower. I don't know. I was telling you, Jonny, just before we started that I just walked into one of these conference rooms that had a green light on it, meaning that nobody had reserved it. And I'm going to hope that nobody else has the same idea. We'll see. But, lots of fun.
But just remind them who you are. That's all you got to do. But I'm Andrew Sullivan, baby. Come on now. Get out of here.
Yeah, well, that and like $7 will get you a cup of coffee these days. So
it's true.
Especially if it's pumpkin spice flavored coffee.
It's the time of year for it, right?
So speaking of, one, it has been since like July or something. Pumpkin spice season gets earlier and earlier. So where I live, we actually have a drone delivery service. So I can literally go on the app, and from the little shopping center that's a couple of miles from my house, they'll go and they'll collect. You order food, they collect it, they put it in the drone, it flies over and it drops it into the yard, right? So my daughter, who's 10, on like opening day of pumpkin spice season, it's like, I want a pumpkin spice latte. Like, okay, I have meetings, like I can't go anywhere. We'll just drone it over, Daddy. So we droned over coffee from the Starbucks, and it's pretty cool. I do it on a, not coffee, but like not semi-regular, but occasionally we will drone over things because we've got practice or we've got some other thing, PTA, or which never thought I'd be a PTA member, but here we are.
Bro.
Anyways, I'm rambling. I'm just pointing out that drone delivery service is everything I could have dreamt of and more. I said my sister was visiting from the mountains, right? She lives way up in the holler, as we like to say, and she goes, well, what are we gonna have for dinner? Like they just gotten there. She's like, I didn't give you any warning. I didn't let you know. So in order to make anything or anything like that, like we'll just drone something. You can do that? Like, yeah. Like, well, welcome to civilization.
Yes, dude. So okay, so when they drone in the drinks, I mean, is it like, are they super careful about it? Like just
Yeah,
drops it?
so it's a pretty sizable drone. Like when it's on the ground, it had like diameter is at least 4 feet, and it has I think 6 or 8 different props
Uh-huh.
that it or whatever rotors that it uses to fly, and it has a big box that has a retractable cable in it. So they go and they pick up your food, and then if you have drinks, they put them in a drink carrier, and it goes into a reusable shopping bag, and they hook it on the thing, and it goes up into the belly of the drone, which is that big box.
Mm-hmm.
It flies over to where you're at. It drops down to 80 feet, and then a cord comes down, and it drops it down, and then unhooks it from the bag, and there you go.
That's dope. So it's on your porch, or is it on like the closest part where it won't interfere with like the house?
So for me, it's in the backyard because that's where it's clearest.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean the porch has a covering on it, so they couldn't get it there. But they, the dogs are not fans. If the dogs are outside and I hear the drone come, I have to go out and get the dogs because otherwise they'll want to try and like grab the bag out of midair.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah,
that is awesome.
Anyways, what's the topic today, Jonny?
So the topic today is going to be disconnected OpenShift part 1. So like we've talked about this for a long time, and it just kind of makes sense to break this up into 2 parts because the first part might not take as long, but it's really just getting all the things that we need together to do the installation, and then the next part will be like the longer probably episode where we're installing maybe a Snow. Like I figure we'll do a Snow and then like a 3-node compact cluster. But I'm setting up the way that we're going to do it today is we're going to download the Quay mirror registry. We're going to configure it, and then we're going to use the OC Mirror version 2 plugin to actually sync all of the content down, and then we'll verify that all of our stuff is in the mirror registry, and I'll go over basically like how to push it directly into the registry, and then how to mirror it down to the file system, so that way we can air gap it, and then. Yeah, that's pretty much going to be the episode. So pretty lightweight, but I think if you're new to it, it'll be a lot to consume at one time. If you're not used to it, or I mean, if you're used to it, it's like, okay, that's not so bad. I got this. If you're not used to it, you're like, okay, I need to break this up into chunks. So that's why I figured this part would be the easiest, because we break this part up, we can section it off, and then go to the next part where it's like, okay, we're going to take what we've done and actually build from it now.
Makes sense to me. Plus, it gives us plenty of opportunity because inevitably something always goes wrong. So plenty of opportunity in time to troubleshoot.
Yes, it's gonna be amazing.
So before we get started, I think we've got a few top of mind things to talk about, right?
Yes. So if you want me to get, or do you want to start, or do you want me to start?
I'll start, and then you can go, and then I can close. Or I've got 2 easy ones. So number 1, in case you have not seen, which I don't blame you if you haven't seen because we've been pretty quiet about it, OpenShift 4.17 released yesterday. So you can go onto all of the various places, console.redhat.com, for example, and download the bits and begin deploying OpenShift 4.17 clusters. So, and I guess really that leads into my second thing, which is the what's new for OpenShift 4.17 is next Monday, the 7th. So next Monday at, I believe it's 10 a.m. Eastern time is when we will have the what's new for that product management does, that talks about all of the things. Jonny and I are going to spend some time, at least 1 episode, if not 2, talking about all the things that are in 4.17, because there is a lot. Mm-hmm. This one, it just coincidentally just has a ton of things in it. So I'm excited to begin talking about it. That being said, you won't hear us here referring to Red Hat making a big deal out of this until like November. And I say that because our marketing folks decouple the release from the launch. So OpenShift 4.17 released yesterday, October 1st, but the launch for it happens closer to when KubeCon is happening because they want to piggyback on those two things off of each other. That's what marketing does. So, anyways, please keep an eye out for the live stream to be staged. I don't know when that's going to happen. All of those things for the What's New session to be happening next Monday, and of course, you can still go to. And that brings me. I guess I'm just going to go first. I don't need to go afterwards. That brings me to my last point, which is also happening in November. Is docs.openshift.com is going to be retired. So if you are currently using docs.redhat.com, or excuse me, docs.openshift.com, please make a conscious effort to move over to docs.redhat.com. That being said, it will still redirect you automatically if you do go to docs.openshift. So keep that in mind as we go forward. But where was I going with that? Oh, I was going to say the reason why I brought up docs.redhat.com, check out the release notes for 4.17. The release notes will have all of the things and all that. If you have any questions, feel free to bring them to the What's New stream. I believe myself, along with a few others, will be on for that. At least I think I'll be on for that. I'll have to double check. In order to help with if you have any questions, if you want to ask anything, we do take those questions that you asked during the stream of the What's New, and we ask them directly to the product management team. So you can always bring stuff up there. So that's all I got. I went first, Jonny. Sorry.
No problem. I'm sitting there I'm messing with this web SSH thing. All right. Yeah. So the other one is KubeCon's coming up. That's 12 to 15 November. So if you're going to be around, I'll be at the ArgoCon booth on day one, but I'll also be over at the OpenShift Commons event. So if you're going to be at KubeCon or if you're going to be at the OpenShift Commons, then come, please come up and say hi. I'd love to talk to you. And the link to that is right here. And I just did something crazy. All right, so that's that. I don't even know what. Okay, that's super crazy. I must have hit a key combination and it made the chat go from normal size to super small. It was it's weird. So yeah, if you're gonna be at KubeCon, come check it out. It's gonna be at Salt Lake City, 12 to 15 November. And then if you're going to again at OpenShift Commons, come check it out. It's our OpenShift community, right? It's where you can come in, talk to other Red Hatter, or not just Red Hatters, but other OpenShifters, I guess, about stuff that's going on in the community. And I think honestly that's it for the top of mind. There's some product release stuff that's come out, like Ansible 2.5 released. That's a pretty significant change. There's another one that it's completely set my mind now, but yeah, that's pretty much it.
Awesome. I'm just replying to chat here.
Yeah, no worries. Oh, this web SSH thing just does not want to be my friend.
Are you trying to share your SSH session?
Yeah, I was trying to not do it through a terminal and then just use the web, but it's just not being friendly.
Yeah. Our Hope 9. So docs.redhat.com, as far as I know, it will retain all of the functionality. I have been trying to move over and use it more. Search is a little bit different. I know because I'm now having frequent conversations with our docs folks for a myriad of reasons. I know that they prefer the docs.redhat site because it's easier for them to create what I'm going to call landing pages and other meta pages. Let me see if I can share a window here. Share window, this one, go. So if we go to docs.redhat.com, so what I mean by those meta pages, as soon as my internet works, come on. If I go to the OpenShift documentation and I come down here to, for example, virtualization. Oh, I'm not going to be able to see it for 4.17 because OpenShift Virtualization 4.17 hasn't been released yet. So if I come down here to virtualization, these meta pages for things like getting started and stuff like that are just easier for them to create and manage and stuff like that. So I know that they have some preference, and it'll make it easier for them going forward, which I'm all about. Making docs easier to create, to manage, to publish, and all that is a great thing for everybody, in my opinion. But yeah, search is a little bit different. Like, TuneD. If I just put in TuneD here, it comes back with the regular, or what looks like the regular access.redhat.com search. So even though I was on the OpenShift documentation page, you notice when I put this in, it takes me to just search for everything or search across everything. So now I have to come over here and do OpenShift and okay, well, I really want OpenShift container platform like this. And now it narrows it down to just the things that I care about. We do still have the issue where old versions will pop up, like you see here, 4.5, 4.8, 4.12, 4.16, 13, 17. So that still exists. I do know that they have some efforts underway to help improve that. But for now, we do have to work through that. You can do things like 4.16 to help with that. Irritatingly, I've also complained about this for what it's worth. You notice that when I added a new parameter here, it didn't remember my product filter over here. So I have to go back and reset that. That's sort of not ideal, but it is what it is. So anyways, that's docs.redhat.com. Hopefully it works out for everybody. And if not, please don't hesitate to send us feedback. I'm more than happy to feed that back into the docs folks, and I don't know, maybe we could even bring one of the docs folks on the stream here, Jonny.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
So,
especially like the workflow. How do I get something into the docs that I think should be there, right? Because I think that part, like, yes, it's all open source, it's in Jira and stuff like that, but it's like, okay, but what's the entry point for? I get, like, is there like an overarching docs, organization that you hit, and then that distributes out to the different, components of the product or whatever? I
actually can answer that.
What's here? Because I actually hit this question last week.
So here, I'll resharing my window here. So on the existing, and this is something that they are working on replacing. I think it's supposed to be there before this site, docs.OpenShift, is retired. So on docs.OpenShift, you can go to any one of these pages. So I'm just going to pick one at random. And up here is a little bug icon. And if you click this, it takes you, well, when you're logged into Jira, it takes you over and it opens the template for you to create a docs bug against that specific page. When you do that, you can request or point out like, hey, this is inaccurate, or there's a typo or whatever, but you can also say, hey, this doesn't make sense. I think it should be reorganized to look like this. Or, can we add a page that has this type of information to it and stuff like that.
Okay, awesome.
So I learned this because recently I was working on, if we come back here, so one of my side jobs is the subscription guide, the OpenShift subscription guide.
Mm-hmm.
And we recently removed a big chunk of that because it has, is it this one that I want? I think it's this one. Anyways, we recently removed a big chunk of it that had all of the different parts and pieces that were in each one of the OpenShift, OKE, OCP, OpenShift Platform Plus. And we pointed it at the documentation. But the docs had a couple of things that were missing and stuff like that. So I chatted with the docs team and they're like, oh, just go here and open bugs. And like that's the easiest way to get in touch with somebody about.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I did not even think about there being a little bug icon in the docs page, to be honest.
Yeah, and this is the page I was talking about of all the different things, what's in each one of the different subscription or entitlement levels for OpenShift and all that. So there's a couple of things that were missing from here that we opened bugs against, and they said, great, thank you, and they addressed them.
Hell yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, mine was about ACM and like well, not really ACM, multi-cluster engine, and like permissions for HyperShift, like the RBAC stuff. If you look in that section, they have like a bunch of stuff for open cluster management, stuff like that, but like nothing really specifically for HyperShift. So if you have a cluster, that's all it's going to do is that. I was like, what are you supposed to do? And so, yeah. So I ended up working, basically going through your rear end to pick your nose, right? Like, just went completely backwards. It's just started pinging people. Hey, who am I supposed to call?
Yeah. Let's see. We got a question here from Ahmed. Running 200 VMs on Rev 4.4, Red Hat Virtualization. It is reaching end of life, August 31st of this year. So a little over a month ago, it went into its last and final life cycle phase. So at this point, I think you can download the bits and you can open support cases, but it's like they can only help so much, and because it's in that life cycle. I can pull it up if anybody's interested, but you can search for Rev lifecycle and you'll find it. Anyways, how easy is it considering migrating to OpenShift? How easy is the migration, and does OpenShift support SAN storage? Easy is always relative, right? What's easy for me is not always easy for Jonny, and vice versa, right? So the migration itself, so the actual act of migrating virtual machines is relatively straightforward using the migration toolkit for virtualization. So effectively, it's a tool that exists inside of the OpenShift cluster. You point it at the Red Hat virtualization cluster, and you say, I want to take these virtual machines, and it does all of the automation behind recreating the geometry of the virtual machines and copying, moving all of the data from old to new. So yes, OpenShift does support SAN storage. However, remember, it's not a data store paradigm or a storage domain paradigm in Rev terminology. So in Rev, just like VMware, just like basically all of the others, it utilizes a data store that is one large piece of storage, or a few that have many virtual machine disks inside of it. OpenShift Virtualization utilizes the Kubernetes persistent volume paradigm. So each virtual machine disk has its own PVC inside of there. So this is important because if you're using an enterprise storage device, you want to make sure that it has a CSI driver. That CSI driver can support the scale that you want to use. Depending on which storage device you're using, and I used to work for a storage vendor, it can vary from the specific model and hardware and specific version of software and specific license entitlements you have. Like, all of these things can affect things like the scalability of the CSI, the number of CSI volumes that you can have. So definitely work with your storage vendor on that. And of course, within the Red Hat portfolio, we have things like ODF. Within the partner ecosystem, IBM Storage Fusion, Portworx, also good software-defined storage options. And that is not to say that all of the major storage vendors, Dell EMC, NetApp, Hitachi, Fujitsu, who am I forgetting? There's a whole page. I will just share the link to that. So there is a whole page. It is red.ht. Sorry, I can't type and talk at the same time. Red.ht/works with virt. So if you go to that link, that link has all of the partners and all of the things that work with OpenShift Virtualization. So it's a good way to get started. I will kick you missdocs.openshift.com. I always try to avoid the Red Hat doc site for OpenShift because, it has changed. So a few months ago, I will kick you. I want to say maybe 6 months ago, maybe even closer to a year, they changed the docs engine for docs.redhat.com. Because the old one, I agree, it was harder to navigate. It was harder to find things. I always preferred the OpenShift one. But the new one is better. The search thing that I showed a moment ago aside, it is better or easier than it used to be for finding information. I will miss docs.OpenShift though. I've always liked that layout.
I agree. It's just nice, right? And it's always been like this nice, clean, kind of like minimalist, page. So it's good.
Yeah,
so I'll be sad.
Yeah, I'm reading your comment here, rhope9, about anything that takes more than 3 clicks often means that people give up and move on. Yeah. I'm learning through both my children as well as coworkers that I'm often overly verbose, and in a similar vein of like, maybe we don't need 5 sentences when 2 sentences will do. So I feel that same pain with finding information. You just saw me do the search thing, and it was half a dozen clicks just to get it narrowed down to just the OpenShift product and stuff like that. So,
yeah, the problem with documentation too is like sometimes you want to be very succinct, but sometimes you have to explain it, and then it's hard to find the balance because maybe Sully, you're like, hey, I like the detailed answer because I like to know I like to have all the tea when I'm doing something, and me being a simpleton, I'm like, just tell me what the fuck to do. Just tell me what to do. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cuss. My bad.
We'll send you a bill.
My fault. I'm sorry. That was a little too natural. My bad.
I think I'm sure I've done it at least once. Anyways,
my fault.
K&A, bit off topic. Actually, not off topic at all. So I guess I didn't do my normal spiel of this is an office hour stream, which means that y'all can ask whatever questions you want, like anything that you want to ask about, anything that's top of mind, anything that you're working through. Ask the questions. We fill in the dead space with whatever the topic of the day happens to be. Today it's going to be watching Jonny not struggle with doing the doing the disconnect and mirroring stuff. But feel free to ask questions, and we'll chat about them and do our best to answer them. If we don't know the answer, which let's be honest happens on a regular basis, we'll happy to reach back into Red Hat and find the right product management, engineering, whoever we need to get those answers. And if we can get them fast enough, which sometimes we do, sometimes we don't, we'll even bring those replies back here on the same stream. If not, we'll follow up with them. So what are the options to have smaller OpenShift clusters as workload isn't resource intensive? One option I see is OpenShift on OpenStack. It's also possible for OpenShift on OpenShift Virtualization. Yes, that is correct. Are there any other better options? So the smallest footprint OpenShift that you can do is single node OpenShift. So I want to say single node OpenShift, you need 6 CPUs and 24 gigabytes of memory to deploy. And then, however much additional you need for the workload. That being said, single node OpenShift does mean that, well, there is no high availability, right? It's one node, there's no redundancy. Even if you add worker nodes, which you can add worker nodes to single node OpenShift, it remains one control plane node. So that means that if that one control plane node fails, you can't schedule things won't get rescheduled, right? All that type of stuff. So the smallest highly available cluster that you can do is, not to spoil the surprise, you can do, well, I think in dev preview, you can do 2 node clusters now. So that happened in 4.17, by the way. If it's not in dev preview now, then it will go into tech preview or dev preview, I think in the next release, something like that. So they are working on doing that. Keep in mind, though, that at that point, if you lose either one of them, you fall out of quorum, and now you can't, right? You're basically in the same scenario. You can't restart workload, but it's easier to recover the cluster, right? Now I can go and I can add a second node or recover a second node and be back up in operation. So really today it's 3 nodes. So we call it a compact cluster. It's a 3-node cluster that has both, it's basically a schedulable control plane. So that as a standalone cluster is the smallest that you probably want to do for highly available workloads. That being said, if you have existing clusters, you can do things like OpenShift on OpenShift using hosted control planes. So hosted control planes means that there is no dedicated control plane nodes or even shared control plane nodes for the cluster. Instead, that control plane workload is hosted in a different OpenShift cluster. So Jonny was talking a moment ago about MCE, multi-cluster engine, which is the thing behind the scenes that does all of that provisioning and configuration there. So that would, from the workload cluster, all of the overhead associated with the control plane, so it's very small. But do keep in mind that has to be hosted somewhere. That somewhere has to be in another OpenShift cluster. But you can host, a bunch of control planes inside of one cluster and have, smaller workload clusters kind of deployed wherever you need them to be. So yeah, OpenShift on OpenShift Virtualization is a great option. OpenShift on bare metal, you can do that too if you have other workloads, other virtual machines that you want. Hosted control planes, I believe now in OpenShift 4.17 is supported disconnected. I don't think it was in 4.16 and earlier, but I would have to verify that. What's new or any additional features in 4.17? So we have, there's a whole live stream coming up on that on Monday with the product management folks, and then we'll follow up with a few of those. For now, I would recommend looking at the release notes for the 4.17 documentation. So I will quickly share that. So if I go to docs.redhat.com, I'm going to be a good corporate citizen. I go to, come on, docs.redhat.com. You see I'm on the 4.17. If we go to release notes and we wait for the site to load, inside of here will be all of the changes, all of the things that you'll be interested in. The docs website is going to make a liar out of me and be very slow. One of the things that I wanted to show, did you get there? Yeah, you got there. Okay. So like here's all of the things that have changed, right? Edge computing, blah, blah, blah. I was just talking about how the control plane stuff has changed. So if I come back here to 4.17, and what I'm looking for is, see, this is where I struggle with the new one, and I still have to learn things. What I'm looking for is the, nope. Scalability and performance section. Oof, that took me a minute to find. And then somewhere in here, if we switch to single page and search for etcd, 237 references. That's pretty impressive, actually. Node scaling for etcd. So here you have one of our mentions for node scaling with etcd. So 4 or 5 node clusters available on bare metal platforms, right? How to scale from 3 to 4 using assisted installer. But you can see here, this is the new stuff with regard that just happened in 4.17 with regard to etcd cluster sizes. Keep in mind that, and I'll spoil this a little bit since we're already talking about it. Scaling out the etcd cluster size does not increase performance. At best, it keeps performance the same. It will most likely decrease performance. However, it will increase failure tolerance. You see, going from 3 nodes, which is the previous standard and still the standard, up to 5 nodes means that I can lose up to 2 of those before my cluster is impacted. But etcd and the way that the Raft protocol works, all of the members, or not, that's not true. A quorum of the members must reply back and acknowledge that they have received the data before it will commit that data. The more nodes you have, the more of those need to acknowledge quorum, or are needed to acknowledge quorum, and therefore it takes longer to actually do that. So just reading through stuff. Jonny, we can get started, I guess, as soon as I'm done with questions. I say that y'all keep asking questions. We're happy to sit here and answer questions all day long, even if we never get to the content.
100% agree with that. Yeah.
Jonny might cry into his pillow tonight if we don't get to cover disconnected, but
I don't know.
Let's see. He's using Cloud Credential Operator compulsory during OpenShift install. So many steps involved from Sonics. So yes and no. There is a way to do the manual Cloud Credential Operator. I'm trying to think of what it's called. It's the
you have like Mint.
Credential Minter. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I am going to switch back here because it's easier to search within just this particular version as opposed to the other one. So Cloud Credential Operator in Mint mode. So this is basically where it will create. You give it you give it an account that has enough permissions to create additional accounts that have only the specific permissions that are needed. But I don't think that it is required in order to do the install. You just have to feed all of those things in. So here's like manual mode with long-term credentials. So not required, but depending on your use case and the things that you're doing, it makes life easier or not.
Yeah, Mint is obviously the way to go. If you're looking for like complete automation, Mint is the way to go. Manual, back in the day when we were doing AWS GovCloud disconnected type deployments, like it was definitely like you had to use manual. So you had to go and create all the IAM credentials and stuff like that, and then make sure that they were available in the secrets.
Yeah.
It was very, very involved.
Well, and before we had the credential mentor, it was like one account was used for everything.
Mm-hmm. Yes, also true. Yeah.
Trying to use this on Nutanix. Nutanix, I don't know a lot about that one. I haven't done anything with Nutanix in a while, so I'll have to apologize for that. I could look it up in the docs, but I feel like that would be redundant since you said you had already gone through the steps. So I'll see if I can find some information out. We'll share it in the next top of mind notes. Let's see. Are there any hosted control planes on OpenShift virtualization resource guidelines? Yes. So if we go to docs.redhat.com, and this time I want advanced cluster manager, advanced cluster management. And if I search in here, I don't remember which of these it is. So hosted control plane resources. If we come in here, this gives us a sizing guideline for hosted control planes. I will take this link and I'll paste it in the chat. But you can see for each control plane, it requires 78 pods, 3 8 GB persistent volumes, 5.5 cores, and 19 gigabytes of memory. Remember, that's just to deploy. As you add services inside of there, those resources are going to go up, right? If you deploy GitOps, GitOps sets up just a ton of watches inside the API server. So API server CPU and memory consumption is going to go up. But yeah, that's where to start. And then beyond that, and I'm going to paste that into the chat here. So beyond that, because you asked about on OpenShift virtualization. So the VMs that would be then deployed, their size is going to be whatever small amount of overhead you have for things like kubelet and the other normal worker nodes, compute nodes, resources, plus whatever application capacity you want to have inside of there. But yeah, in the hosting cluster, the cluster that is hosting control planes, this is the expected resource utilization. Going back up in chat here. No API deprecations in 4.17 or 4.18. I haven't looked. It's good if there's not, or I feel like it simplifies things for folks who are doing upgrades. So that is definitely good to know. Can't go with single node OpenShift as HA. Yep, I get it. OpenShift on top of OpenShift virtualization is the way to go. Can you share the docs link? Yep. So actually, the link that I just posted into chat there will take you to. It'll take you to this section, but they're all it's all in the same place. So this is the documentation that you want. Note that the hosted control planes docs are spread out in a couple of different places. ACM is not required for hosted control planes, but it makes things much easier in my opinion, and I think the organization's opinion. So you'll find a fair chunk of the hosted control planes documentation in the ACM docs as well. But you also find them inside of the OpenShift docs because they're starting to cross-populate. Chapter on installation on Nutanix. Yeah, there is a install docs for Nutanix if you go here, wherever it's at. Here we go. Yeah. So keep in mind that Nutanix is either IPI or non-integrated. There is no UPI for Nutanix, so far as I know. These are alphabetical, but sometimes the alphabet is hard. Bare metal with plenty of resources which go to waste if directly deploy OpenShift. Yeah. Yep, that makes sense. That's kind of the use case that we see for hosted control planes as well. Make sure in the hosted control planes docs, there is a whole section deploying high availability. Make sure you review this section of documentation. High availability for hosted control planes. Because of course, if you think about it, you're taking multiple clusters of control planes and putting them all in one cluster. So that cluster becomes a potential significant failure point, right? That one cluster going down could affect all of the clusters. So this section of the documentation walks you through like when things fail, what's actually affected, how you recover, right, from different things going wrong, how you protect all of those different control plane workloads, all that other stuff. So super important section of the documentation if you're using hosted control planes, regardless of which infrastructure provider you're using, whether it's bare metal, whether it's OpenShift virtualization, etc. Yep. Okay. All right. I think I've reached the end of the chat or the questions that were posted in chat here. So if y'all don't hesitate, continue asking questions. We're happy to answer those. I'll turn over the screen share to Jonny so he can start going through his thing. And Jonny knows I'm not afraid to interrupt him to ask or answer questions. So don't hesitate to keep going. I'll also take this to a moment to point out that if you're not watching us live or if you're listening to us, you can always reach out to us via email as well. Or even if you are watching us live, reach out to us via email. We're easy to get a hold of, Jonny, Jonny at redhat.com, or Sully, Sully at redhat.com. We love to get emails from y'all, and we do our best to answer them. I will admit that my inbox is often inundated, so sometimes lately it's been taking me longer than others. You can also, there is a vibrant and thriving community of folks on the Kubernetes Slack. So if you go to slack.kubernetes.io, you can get an invite over to the Kubernetes Slack team channel. I don't even know what Kubernetes calls, or Slack calls them anymore. Workspace. It's the Kubernetes workspace in Slack, and there is an OpenShift users channel inside of there. You can also go to the Commons Slack. If you are a member of OpenShift Commons, there is a Slack workspace for them as well. It's another great place to connect with, a few hundred to a few thousand of your closest friends. All right, Jonny, you ready?
Let's do this.
Speed run.
Let's do it. All right, so I'm going to share my window really quick. Maybe.
That's not boding well, Jonny.
No. I'm just trying to figure out where to start here. So I'll start with this. All right, cool. So today, what I'm going to talk about.
You're going to have to shrink the window horizontally. You got a widescreen monitor, don't you?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, I know. That's great.
All right. Is that better?
There we go. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. All right, so basically what I want to do is just talk about how I'm going to set up the infrastructure. All right, and so this is going to be really quick, and then we're going to go through installing the Quay mirror registry. So that's downloading, unpacking it, the basic installation. To pull the images and the operators and stuff like that we need our pull secret from console.redhat.com. And then when we create the Quay mirror registry, we're going to take the credential that we provisioned with the mirror registry, and we're going to merge the two together. So that way we can just basically pull the content down and push it right into the mirror. And then the last part is we're just going to talk about the content mirroring in general, like the workflow, kind of like what to expect when things are done. And yeah, so with that said, let's go with the infra setup. And so now we can see we have a blank page here. And so what I'm going to do is this is going to be my Fedora ASUS machine. So I've got a little NUC. So a little NUC here. And then I've got a virtual machine called Mirror, right? And so this connection actually has it's got a connection to the internet.
Is this a ScalaDraw?
It is. I needed something that I could kind of like whiteboard a little bit easier. And this just kind of made the most sense. Sorry, my dogs had stuff to do. All right, and so then this machine is going to be called like our bashin, or demo, right? And if you think about this, inside of my NUC, I've got an external network, and then I've got an internal network, right? And then it's going to be jrecord.int, .int, and then this is going to be maybe jrickard.io. And the reason why I bring this up is because this network here is isolated. So once it's up, it can only communicate with other hosts that are on that network. And then it's basically a NAT network. So it just pumps out through a bridge. And this mirror machine, it has a connection to both. And so this is typically what we'll see, like in a restricted environment, not necessarily a fully disconnected, but in a restricted environment, you'll have a machine that's kind of connected and bridging both sides of the network.
Yeah.
And so we'll pull all the stuff down from the internet down to the mirror node, and then the bash node will have a firewall punch through to where it can actually communicate with this. Or what we'll do is we'll download everything locally on the mirror, and then basically ship it over to the bash node through the firewall, SSH, CDs, DVDs, whatever it is, right?
Ethernet, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, whatever your workflow is to get it there, that's the idea. So I'm going to jump over, and actually, I'm going to share the link to these docs just so if everybody wants to, they can follow along. Bam, maybe. Sorry, just going to send this real quick. Disconnected documentation, mirror 2, the mirror version v2. And the reason why I'm using v2, it's a tech preview feature. It should be going GA pretty soon, but v2 it's pretty awesome. Like it's very consistent. When you're mirroring content, it's idempotent, right? So if you're mirroring stuff, if you want to run it again, it's very nice to use. And my experience with it so far has been it's actually been pretty awesome. The other document that I wanted to share is I'll come back to that.
Our Hope 9 asked a question about the mirror registry. Does it come up with valid certificates, or do you need to account for that?
It comes with certificates, so it downloads them, or and that's what we'll do some of the verification. So so when you install it, it creates its own certificates, and then you just dump those over into your CA Trust, and then you can actually start using it from there. Or you can use your own custom SSL certificates. So what I think I'm going to do next week on NetStream is take the stuff that we got from Ashley and just kind of roll through like creating certificates and then dumping that in, and then actually seeing the entire workflow.
Yeah, because when you have your own custom certificates, they go in the install config.
Yeah,
and then they get populated alongside. It's no longer the ICSP; it's the
image content set.
Yeah, it's the image digest mirror set and image tag mirror set. IDMS and ITMS.
Yep.
Which also get posted or put into the install config when installing from new.
Yep, exactly. All right, so because I was lazy, I did use just
You need to switch tabs.
So I realized as soon as I started typing, I was like, oh my God. All right, so cat. So the clients that we need are going to be the mirror registry. We also need the mirror plugin, and then we need the OpenShift client and the OpenShift install. And if you see this RHEL 9, that's very, very important. So if you're using RHEL 8, you cannot use like just the normal Linux client or the RHEL 9 client. You actually have to use like the specific targeted client. And I believe it has something to do with RHEL 9 and FIPS. When they provision the client, it had something to do with that. I can't remember all the details. I have an article somewhere that I can post to the session notes. But just a quick rundown is we're going to download the mirror registry, and then we're going to unpack it, and then we're going to start to install it. So to save a little bit of time, I've already downloaded it. So I'm just going to do a tar.
You don't want to test your internet connection, like both downloading while at the same time streaming?
I could, but what's the point? I have bad enough luck doing demos. Like I don't want to push it.
I was on a call with someone the other day, and they did that, and their internet saturated, and they disconnected from the meeting.
That would be my luck, though. That would be that'd be exactly what's going on. So this step right here, it's not absolutely necessary, but just from an organization point of view, it's nice to have just a place where you can just dump everything to and then go into it and look at it, because it'll just break everything down. It deploys an execution environment. It deploys all the archives and stuff like that that you need for the mirror registry.
And our Hope 9 is trying to make this a challenge for you and suggesting that you should do stand up a full IDM solution and then use that during the disconnected mirror process and install process.
Oh, I've done it before. It's not like it's not out of the question. Where IDM gets a little funky is the wildcard certificates. So if you're just doing like host certificates, it's not an issue. But wildcard, it's a little tricky, because you have to, from what I remember, and this was 100 years ago, by the way, you had to go in and like modify the way IDMs. It was like modifying IDM CA store to allow you to do wildcard certs. So it's just it wasn't not trivial. You know what I mean? So
going back to your consulting days, Jonny.
Yes. If I start like tweaking out a little bit, I'm sorry. It's the flashbacks. All right. So this is what's unpacked from the mirror registry download. And so if we just run the mirror registry help, we can see like basically we have install, uninstall, upgrade, so basic stuff. So I'm going to do an install and then help. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the init password, and I'm going to leave the init user the same. So we'll see it though. It'll dump out where it'll say, hey, the username is init. It'll generate a password if you want to use it, but I'm actually just going to set it because I'm lazy. All right, so password, super secret, and I'm also going to set the Quay hostname to here.jericho.io. I believe that should do it. Now, the interesting thing about target hostname and target username is you can actually create the mirror registry to where it'll set up like you're on the other side of this, right? So if we were going into the disconnected side, you can set up your target information here too, so that way you could push to it and then it maps out the same. So that's something that we'll look at.
Yeah, I remember, this was almost literally 100 streams ago. One of the first ones that you did was disconnected. And I think it was right after the mirror registry had come out, or maybe it was still in tech preview, something like that.
Yeah.
So this is a huge improvement. And I don't think it was 4.16, but maybe 4.14 or 4.15, they made some significant improvements to the usability and the experience with the mirror registry. And it's nice to see all of this and how much easier it is.
It is so nice. And honestly, like, it's just like when you have everything's DNS related, right? So if you're using like localhost and stuff like that, that's where you can be like, okay, you can run into a little bit of issue. But as far as like the process of downloading, installing, and then actually using, it's so dope. And you don't run into like a lot of the old issues that you'd run into with like the old Docker V2 stuff, where it's like, okay, am I pushing this into the right place? Am I running out of, where am I, like, where it was hard to figure out like where the wall was, Yeah. It always dumps it out, and then you can look at it and be, okay, yeah, I'm stupid. That was me.
Yeah, I also think, I think we're seeing more usage of the mirror registry as folks have more OpenShift clusters. Because if you think about, when you're doing updates or deployments or anything like that, if you're having to go out and pull, gigabytes of data for every cluster that you're doing with every deployment, every update, right? All those things, it's, one, it extends the amount of time. I'm not going to call out that it uses, internet data. I feel like most people have, don't have data caps, maybe not. But particularly if you have, not necessarily the best bandwidth, you're trying to pull a dozen clusters worth of updates, across a WAN link that maybe is 100 megabit or something like that. You can mirror everything once and use that and speed all of that stuff up. So somebody asked in Slack this morning, internal Slack, how long, my cluster has this geometry, right? It was like 3 control plane nodes and half a dozen infra nodes and a dozen or 2 compute nodes. Like, how long will it take to do updates? And my tongue-in-cheek response was, well, how long is a piece of string? Right? You don't know, right? Because there's just so many things that can go into it. But I did point out there's kind of 3 things that contribute to how long it'll take for the node to reboot, which is always the longest part. One is doing the coordinate drain. So if it takes your applications a long time to terminate, so that the node can be drained, that means that your update process is going to take longer. 2 was the actual, especially for bare metal, the amount of time it takes to reboot the nodes. And then
Oh, yeah.
three is if you're having to wait to pull down updates, right? If you got to pull down gigabytes worth of container images.
Yeah, it's going to take forever. And then now multiply that times every environment, right?
Our Hope 9, is it a disk? It is a disk versus net problem, isn't it? I'm not sure what you're referring to there. Like the speed for the mirroring. So it looks like your install finish.
Yep, the install finished, and so it says, "Hey, look here's all your stuff. It's in Quay install." So if I do a pwd, I'm in home directory, Quay install, and my username is not root. It is just this time. I actually use my actual username, but this time I sudo. But to answer our Hope 9's question about the CA stuff, if I could just type, all of our certs are here, right? So if we do like an open SSL, that in, oh man, oh I didn't, dummy. Spot that. PIM. We can see that we've got our Quay certificate, or that our CA certificate, and this is the important part. And this is something that when Ashley was going through the certificates last week, right? When we use the SAN and we use that new, because if you remember, she was talking about you have to set up the subject alt name, you have to set up the CN and all that stuff, and that's because of the version 3 part of the certificate. And the important part when you're doing the CA stuff is that you have this option here. That's where it says CA is true. Otherwise, the OpenShift won't even recognize it as a CA, and it just causes all kinds of funk nasty problems. This is one of the issues that you'll run into with using normal certificates or self-signed certificates in like the registry as well, like Docker registry v2. Yeah.
And so Aliraza has a question here.
Yeah.
What's the difference between deploying to Docker versus Kubernetes? I mostly use Docker if I ever do container-based deployments. I'll let you type for a moment while I'll take a first swing at that.
Yeah, go for it.
So in most ways, they're going to be effectively the same, right? Docker is, when we think Docker or Podman on an individual host, right? I'm going in and I'm saying, Podman creates or Podman deploy or Docker creates, this container instance, and telling it, I want it to be available on these ports with these environmental variables with this image and blah, blah, blah. Kubernetes is effectively the same thing, but out of the box, it's meant to be a cluster of resources. So I define a pod. A pod is one or more container images that has the same things, environment variables, ports that need to be accessed, right? All those other things. And it uses the control plane, uses the scheduler and says, oh, I think node 1 or node 2 or node 17 or whatever is the best place to do that. And it literally goes and deploys a container on that host. With OpenShift, it uses Creo, whatever one you want to call it, right? We still use that?
Yep.
Sometimes I can't keep up with these things. As the container runtime engine, and then it sort of abstracts, just like Docker does, the creation and connection of the networks and all those other things. So at the lowest levels, it's still just a container at the end of the day. It's just, how do I want to deploy it? Do I want to deploy it to a cluster of things where I have high availability? It'll restart the container if something fails, all of that. Anything to add, Jonny?
No, I think you nailed it. All right, so what I'm doing is I'm just logging into Podman on my virtual machine using the credentials from the Quay init. And so, like I was telling you before, we have to merge the two pool secrets together. So if I just do, please don't show everything. Let's see. New pipe rep mirror. All right, so we can see I've already got my credential. I had to go up for the right thing because I was like, oh man, if I put Rickard, it's going to end up dumping all my
Your pull secret.
But yeah, so I've added my pull secret in here. But the way that you would do this is you would do like an echo, no new lines, and then init for your username, and then whatever your password was, and then you base64 encode it. Right. And so what this base64 is saying, it's saying, hey, don't add any lines. And we're also saying when I echo this in, strip out all new lines. And the reason being is that when you look at a base64 encoded, resource, whatever it is, if you have a space after it, if you have a new line, if you have a tab or whatever, that adds an extra character. And so, the difference between a base64 encoded string versus a base64 encoded string with a space at the end of it, it may not look that big, but it's a huge difference, and it will fail when you try to authenticate. All right, so okay, so now we have we've set up the mirror registry. So let's go ahead and just take a look really quick and make sure it's working. Oh, and bam, I'm going to switch over to the tab really quick.
So did we screen freeze or did we?
It's me.
Okay.
All right, and if I use init and then password, okie dokie. All right, so we can see I've just got my initial organization. This, if you've ever used Quay or Quay, or if you've used Quay.io or whatever, this should look very familiar to you. And I think that's a lot of the upside to this, right? Is like if you've used Quay Enterprise or if you've used Quay.io, using the Quay mirror registry is going to be a very similar experience. And I think that when you think about that, going from tool to tool to tool and having that same kind of workflow, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I'm really glad that they did it this way.
Yeah. I've got a Microshift question for you, Jonny.
Yes, sir. Can
you deploy Microshift or create a Microshift instance from the Cloud Console?
I don't think so. I could be wrong, but I'm not sure.
I don't think so either.
Because it's you do it through like the Rail packages, so that's why I don't think so.
Yeah, I thought so as well. I'm glad you confirmed that, because Microshift it's like OpenShift 3, right? You deploy Rel, and then you add Microshift on top of it. Not like OpenShift 4, where it's all instantiated as a single unit.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be another one that we could do too, where we just install like a Microshift like mini cluster. I don't know why I said that. Install like a Microshift cluster, and then have it point to like
Microshift cluster, if you will.
Yeah, super micro. Is that? Oh no, wait, that's actually something else.
Yeah, it's already taken.
Yeah, damn it. But yeah, like set up Microshift and have it point to the internal stuff, right? So that way,
yeah,
I don't know, that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah. So Sonic says got lost on the part about certificates. So I don't know if you want to revisit that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was doing that while we were talking about something else too. So the installer put everything in Quay install.
Yeah, switch your tab again.
Oh, sweet Jesus. All right, so if I cd to Quay install, inside of that directory, there's the Quay config, which is, if you just look at it, it's just, the config.yaml, some OpenSSL things, right? The self-signing part of the certs. And then if you look in the Quay root CA, it's actually got your generated certificate with the key and all that stuff, right? So what I did is I copied that. I copied the root CA over to etc pki CA trust source and anchors, and then I ran update CA trust extract. All right, and what that does is that takes a certificate that's in that anchors directory, and it blasts it into the local trust of the system. And so then if you do a like a trust and then list and then pipe grep for I just grep for mirror, but I'm just grepping for like the name of the certificate, right? So now I can see that CA certificate, or that certificate that I put in the anchors, is actually presented to the system. The trust in the system is aware of it and can actually use it.
And the reason why you had to do that is because it's a self-signed certificate.
Yes.
If it's from your corporate CA or from a public CA where it's already trusted by the system, you wouldn't have to do this part.
Yes. And if you watched last week's episode with Ashley, right? Ashley had made a reference to this where she was talking about combining, the certificates that were on one side versus, like I think it had 4 of the roots, but not maybe 2 other ones. And so she combined the 2 together, and it's the same concept, right? you're basically saying, hey, I've got a list of certificates that I trust, and I've got the self-signed one that I need to trust. And so you're merging the list together, and now the system can trust both sides of it.
Yeah, our Hope 9 is asking a question of, can you use the pull-through feature of Quay with the mirror registry?
I don't know.
I don't know the answer to that either.
Yeah, it's not a full-featured like Quay deployment. So I'm not 100% sure if you can use the pull-through. I'll reach out to Daniel and ask that.
Yeah, I'm going to ask on the tech marketing team as well.
All right, good question, I hope not. All right, cool. So now, hopefully, if there's any more questions about the certificates and how that stuff is set up, let me know. I'm also going to post a gist of today's, like, all the command line things that I've done. I'll post the verse commands that I ran to build the virtual machine, so that way you'll have everything soup to nuts on like how I'm deploying this example. And I'm going to CD to a directory I've already made called resources, and in here I've just got an image set that I've already created, right? And so you can see the API version is OpenShift.io or mirror.OpenShift.io v2 alpha 1, and that's important because if you're using v1, it's a different API group. And then we're just going to download the stable channel for 416. The type is OCP. This graph true, what this is saying, hey, I want you to bring down the download or the update graph with it, right? So that way you can say, that way you know if I'm going to 417, it'll have the graph to get from where I'm at to where I want to go. And then as far as catalogs, as far as operators, I'm going to download the 416 operator index. I'm going to pull down the LVMS operator and then the OpenShift GitOps operator, but I'm only going to pull down like GitOps 1.13. And then I'm going to pull down a community operator called the patterns operator. It's our internal team operator that we use to deploy all of our validated patterns. So, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
No.
So two things. So Vasco says, good idea to do Red Hat Device Edge demo. So I'll point out that we actually have 2 other episodes that featured Microshift and the Device Edge folks. So one, you can go to, and I'll put this in the chat here, https red.ht/AOA, ask an OpenShift admin. So if you go to that link, that takes you to the YouTube playlist on the OpenShift YouTube channel for all of the streams. So episode 62 as well as episode 76 both had Microshift. So 62, I think, was Henri, who was showing a bunch of really cool stuff with Device Edge and Microshift. 76 was with, not Luis, Diego. And Diego showed the, was it the Pokemon game or the something like that? Or a Safari game.
Safari, yeah.
And deployed to Microshift. So give both of those a watch. They both show some really cool stuff and different things with Microshift and Device Edge. So if you are curious, if you have questions still, please let us know. It's not on the screen at the moment. I hid our names so that way you can see the bottom line of text. I dislike that it hides that. No, you're good. I dislike that it hides it. That I can't take just the name off of the screen share. I can only take the names off of all of the windows. Whatever. Anyways, you can send us an email, Jonny, JONNY @redhat.com, or Sully, SULLY @redhat.com. Emra asks, question, works with insecure registry without importing the image registry certificate into OpenShift. However, why does OSUS, which I believe is OpenShift Update Service, Graph Builder, give certificate verify failed errors? And I believe the answer to that is because you, much like Ashley showed last week, you have to add that certificate in for the cluster. So you can say, like, for the registry poll, like, here's the certificate, but you still need to add it as a trust at the cluster level, if that makes sense.
Yep.
And Ashley walked through that process in great detail and did an amazing job of showing it. So definitely check out the stream we did with her.
Yeah, I agree. And to the Diego live stream where he did the Safari stuff with Microshift, I use that as a reference all the time. Like, he did such a great job, and like that team, the way that they documented the different like aspects of that demo is really well done. And then Ashley's demo last week, I thought, like, crazy organized, really good. I thought, just awesome. I love the way that she was testing things. I was like, oh yeah, that's awesome. All right, cool. So the other thing that we can do is we can pull down additional images. So say if you have like, I just, using the UBI as a reference here, we want to pull down the UBI image. We want to pull down the UBI 8 based off of a tag, and then UBI 9 based off of a SHA. And it's just showing you different ways that you can do the same thing. And once we get this thing started, it will take some time. But it's just the idea is you can define it all in one place, all the things that you need. And if you had a Helm chart, you can actually define those Helm charts as long as you had them out in like a OCI compliant registry. So if you had them push up in the Quay or something like that, then you can actually pull them down as part of this and then have it all bundled up. And then that way, when you do ship it over into your disconnected environment, you literally have all the things that you could possibly need for your deployment. So to run this, I'm going to run ocmirror -c for the image set. So we're just basically saying the configuration that we're going to use is this image set.yaml. And we're going to tell it a workspace file. Let's see, mirror, and then we're going to do a Docker, and then it's going to be mirror.jrickard.io 8443 v2. And so we're telling it, hey, dump all the stuff here when you're done. This is where you're going to push it to. And so if you look at this command, just looking at the command, you can tell that we're going from upstream into our mirror. And then I'll show you the other command where it's just a command line feature. And we're using the v2 plugin here.
So Savion, pull-through feature that our Hope 9 mentioned looks awesome. Possible to set up some push alerts to be notified when that is released to general availability. So Quay itself, so if you have OpenShift Platform Plus, or if you have standalone Quay entitlements, Quay, like Big Quay, supports that already. I think what wasn't clear is whether or not the mirror registry use case allows that. So the short version is this mirror registry. It is Quay. It's just a trimmed down Quay, and one where there's a limited, like, I'm going to call it a term of service or license or anything, but like it's for specific use cases, specifically for mirroring the images used for OpenShift deployments and updates. So I don't know, and I did ask, so we'll find out. But I don't know if that's allowed or not with the mirror registry use case or not. I said before, if you have OpenShift Platform Plus, so OpenShift Platform Plus includes Quay, and with that Quay instance, you can use it for whatever.
Yep.
So with the other thing, like, so with ACM, I either have to, whatever nodes are connected and managed by ACM, either have to have OpenShift Platform Plus or ACM entitlements in order to use it. With the Quay instance, you don't, right? I can deploy Quay into my OpenShift Platform Plus entitled cluster, and then anything and everything can connect into it and use it as that registry. So Srinivasa, is there a comprehensive document that outlines the step-by-step process for deploying and administering an OpenShift cluster? If so, could you please share it? Yes and no. So the correct or technically correct, but not very good answer, in my opinion, is the documentation. The documentation is going to be exhaustive and have all of the things and all of that. Unfortunately, the documentation is also exhaustive and has all of the things, and therefore it is not very precise, right? It's literally, I think if you were to print it, it's probably 20,000 pages, and nobody wants to read 20,000 pages. So they are working on doing some better, I'm going to call them like pathway type things that you can follow in order to figure out what's going on. So for example, Jonny, if you can bring up a tab to docs.openshift.com and then go to the virtualization page.
Bam.
Well, no, just like, so do,
I'm sorry, I was done.
no, you're good. Yeah, go. So yeah, go to 416. And then all the way down at the bottom there is virtualization. And then go to like about, or getting started is what we want. Yeah. So getting started, and then getting started. Like if you look at this, like this has sort of a guided path of here's the things that you need to know in order to, utilize OpenShift virtualization. So there are different sprinklings of this throughout the docs. You can also find for some of the, and I think I talked about this a few streams ago in Top of Mind, for some of the install methods, there is same sort of thing. So if you scroll up to the install segment of the docs and expand it and go to the vSphere, I think it's vSphere IPI. Yeah, installing on vSphere, or it's just the vSphere section. So you see, like here, like if I select, or if you select installation methods at the top, this will kind of walk you through and like, here's the things you need to know, and here's how to start making decisions of where to go next on which one you want to use and stuff like that. Whereas some of the other documentation sections, so I think if you choose the installing on any platform one, for example, like you see that was like 20 different docs pages, right? This one is the same 20 docs pages, but in one.
Yeah, you can definitely see it right here.
So, going back to the docs team is working diligently to improve the user experience and the usability of the documentation. Much like the future, right? It's here. It's just unevenly available. So that's kind of the best. Or let me rephrase that. That is the most thorough option that is available. If you look on, so here in the stream, we've done a number of episodes where we walk through different things. If you prefer video type learning, although some of it's a little bit dated at this point, we really need to revisit some of these things, Jonny. So you can also go to, I always encourage folks to search the Red Hat blog. So you can do, in your search engine of choice, search for OpenShift installation and then do site:redhat.com/blog. And I find that's the easiest way to find the things that you're interested in, and usually it'll be a very targeted walkthrough experience.
Did I do that right? Is it?
It's redhat.com/blog.
Oh.
So yeah, you can see there's a bunch of different installation methods there. And last but not least, I will have to find the link while Jonny's walking through the next thing, but we do have some, we recently started creating demos in a different way. So I don't know if it's published yet. If it is, I will share the link, but we have a demo that shows, you can click through and see all the steps, and it tells you things of using the assisted installer in order to deploy a cluster and what that experience is like and everything. So if I can find that link, I will share it.
Okay. Awesome. And yeah, and just this is going to take a while to run, but what we can do is we can go into our Quay registry and just start refreshing. We can see that we're starting to get some organizations spun up for the top level OpenShift images. And so really, Sully, that's really it for this. I mean, because next week it's going to be taking this and then moving it over and then start using it. So
and do you know how much storage the mirroring and OpenShift install takes these days?
With this one, with the with the operator and a couple images, I think it's right around, I want to say 35 gigs or something like that. I might be misremembering, but I'll have it for next time.
Yeah, and so the reason I ask is if you don't filter the operators, if you just take the entire operator catalog, I want to say it's north of a terabyte these days.
Yes. Oh no, it's crazy. Yeah, if you take everything.
So yeah, if definitely, at a minimum, I would say prune the catalog so that you're only doing maybe just the Red Hat operators if you don't know which ones specifically you want, or maybe just I don't know if the marketplace works disconnected, but don't take all 300 or 400 operators in the entire catalog if you're going to mirror it offline, unless you need to. Definitely filter it down and just take the ones you want, because otherwise it is a significant amount of storage that you'll be using.
Yeah, it could be, it's bananas, especially because you figure every operator, it's going to go and pull all the images that are associated with that operator. So you might only be thinking oh, okay, it's just a catalog and whatever, but it's actually whatever other images that operator needs to run. And I just want to make one last statement about the OC mirror. The reason why OC mirror is so awesome and the reason why you should use it is because if you think back to the way that we did it before, yestertime, right? It was OCADM. And so it was a command just to pull down the OpenShift images. And then you had to run OPM to pull down the operator images. And so it was these two like 2 things that you had to run asynchronously, and OPM, nothing against it, but it wasn't always, it didn't always do what it was supposed to do.
Yeah.
And then OC Mirror, the idea was like, okay, where can I define all the things in one place and pull them down, and then be able to take those bits, across the boundary and into my environment where I needed them. And a good friend of mine, Alex Flom, no longer a Red Hatter, but he's kind of like the brainchild behind it. And so that whole team, Jay Flowers and those guys, like they put a lot of time and effort into getting OC Mirror working V1. And it's cool to see the evolution, right? My favorite tech word right now, evolution, because the V2 of this it's so much better. The output's better. The way that you can take the resources into the new environment, it's just so much easier to use. And I'm glad, because it was a pain back in the day.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 100% agree. I'm just catching up on chat. K&A, small suggestion. Better naming of streams. Yeah, Jonny and I are both engineers. We're terrible at naming things. So any suggestions you have, we're happy to. It's hard to change the titles of streams that have already happened, but I think we'd be more than happy to put in like in the description and stuff like that, so that when you search for things, it pops up easier.
Yes, please let me know. I'll be more than happy to.
Yeah. I wasn't going to throw you under the bus, but since you just volunteered that, Jonny does most of that stuff, and by most of I mean all of it. I don't even.
Thanks for calling me out, Sully.
So, no, I say that like you always ask me like, hey, is this title good or something like that? But you're definitely you're the one who puts in the work of creating the artwork and staging everything and doing all that other stuff, and I deeply and greatly appreciate it, even though I don't think I tell you that nearly enough.
Well, I deeply and greatly appreciate you saying that. That's very nice. Thank you.
Let's see. Possible to have one Quay on ACM to have a centralized registry for a set of clusters? Yes, absolutely. If so, is there any documentation for this type of use case? Could you kindly briefly explain? So it's really nothing special. So I think in the comment above, rhope 9 linked to the Quay documentation. It would just be a standard Quay deployment, and then you would use the if you want to use Quay to replace the internal registry in OpenShift, you would use I think it's the registry bridge operator.
Quay bridge operator, yep.
Quay bridge operator, there we go.
Yep.
So it's in the documentation there, and it explains you deploy the operator. Basically, it removes the default internal registry and then redirects everything over into that single Quay instance, or whatever Quay instance it's pointed at. So a great way to save on capacity and resources, and just consolidate all of those things there. And we did have somebody who showed that at one point, and I don't remember who or when or where or when it was on one of the streams, but we did show that at one point. We'll have to, again, we need to revisit a lot of these topics.
Yeah, this is a good one to revisit.
Yeah.
I haven't used it in a long time.
After 4 years, right, a lot of things have changed. We're on OpenShift 4.17 now.
Yeah.
What is the issue if you're using self-signed certificates? Could produce an issue for the cluster installation, or could it produce an issue for the cluster installation? So, yeah. Go ahead, Jonny.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say, yeah, it could if you don't. So when you're doing your cluster installation, there's a field inside the install config, and we'll actually show this next week. And you have to add it as an additional trust bundle. And if you don't do that, then that's where you're going to have problems, because then OpenShift itself, when it tries to do the install, it won't trust the source, and it won't complete the installation. So that's where it could become an issue. Yeah,
there's nothing, ignoring the normal technical objections to self-signed certificates, right? And the reasons why people don't like self-signed certificates. Let's assume that we're okay with that, or that we have accepted the risk associated with it. The issue is just you have to account for that. So because CoreOS, et cetera, doesn't already trust that CA, that signed certificate, you just have to tell it to trust it. And so it's a little bit of extra configuration inside of there. And you have to do it at installation, so that way it knows when it's pulling its images and all that other stuff, it trusts that registry. Or if you already have a cluster that's up and running and you want to change the registry that it's using, or add a new one or something like that, you go in and you add that, and you can do it in a couple of different places. One, if you want the entire cluster to trust it, you can follow the process that Ashley showed us last week. Or you can, when you go and define the image digest mirror set or image tag mirror set, I believe you can add in the CA for that there, if I recall correctly. I might be misremembering the ICSP though.
Yeah, I don't remember for sure. I'd have to go back and look.
Savion, see the search result for Google return docs from version 3.7. Yeah, I know. Turns out SEO is hard, and I've been shaking my fist and tilting at that windmill for like at least 3 years now, and it has gotten better. But yes, old versions do still turn up in a lot of searches. RHOPE 9, just remember that you need to take the amount of resources into account. Yep, okay. All right.
Yeah.
So next week, Jonny. So hopefully between now and next week, that finishes mirroring.
Oh, it really only takes like 35, 40 minutes. It's not bad at all, honestly, but it's just.
Well, it says you with your fancy Texas internet.
I know. That's true. So, it's really, honestly, it's not bad though. It's just, I think had I prepared a little bit better, I would have had the baking show kind of stuff going where I would have already done a sync and had a directory where we could have looked at it. But I was like, all right, I'm just going to start from scratch this morning. And then that way I'm not tainted and I'm not missing anything.
So there is, I know I need to get better at that as well. Let's see. Sorry, I'm doing two things at once and I shouldn't be doing that. Because I'm trying to read the question and find where the answer to the question is at. Vusa asks, is there a limit to the number of ingresses you can add to OpenShift? There is, and I believe it is in the documentation, but I haven't actually verified that. So let's see if we can find it. So I'm in the docs, right? This is 417. I'm in the section here, scalability and performance, and then planning your environment according to object maximums. I suspect if it's in the docs that this would be the place that it's going to be at. And I'm looking in through here. Pods, builds, pods per namespace, number of routes and backends per ingress controller. So it's 2,000 per router. So what do we mean by per router here? So by default, there is one router or one ingress instance, or that's not even accurate. One ingress controller assigned to the default apps.clustername.domain name stuff. You can create, even though there's multiple instances of that for high availability reasons. So by default, you're going to have two ingress controllers for apps, star.apps, and those can have up to 2,000 ingresses. I can shard that and have multiple instances, or I can create additional domains, or additional endpoints, and each one of those can have 2,000. But yeah, if you wanted to continue to use the star.apps for everything, you would do router sharding. So if we come up here and search for shard, and somewhere in here, hopefully, maybe distributed. I think it's this one. Yeah, creating a route for ingress controller sharding. So effectively, this is the process that you follow in order to utilize those additional sharded instances with your routes. You can do that on a per namespace basis as well. So your users don't have to be cognizant of every time they create a route that it uses this shard or that shard. I think that's accurate, right, Jonny?
Yes.
It's been a minute since I did anything with it. So.
Yep. And if you want to just create a host, like a host-based route, you always have that flexibility as well to just create it in the general.
Prod dot cluster name versus dev dot cluster name versus pre-release dot cluster name, on and on and on. You can do based off of that. Each one of those would be a new ingress controller or pair of ingress controllers for high availability. Each one of those would reset that 2,000 value. So with that, we have reached the end of demo and the content that we had prepared for today. And I say we because I want to feel included, but really it was all Jonny.
It's still royal we. We're a team. So.
So thank you, Jonny. I appreciate all of the work that you put in here. I know you've been working on this one for a little bit, but we kept getting pulled into other things and other stuff was happening. And so I think we originally planned to do this one like a month ago, and
Yes.
So appreciate your diligence and sticking with it.
Yeah.
To the audience, thank you all very much for being with us today. The questions, the chat have been amazing. We love it when you all are interactive and when you ask us things, push back on things, correct us. Jonny is both omnipotent and omniscient. However, I am not. So please don't hesitate to push back on us and ask questions. As always, and as I've said a couple of times here, I'm going to both unshare my screen as well as turn back on our names so that way you can see if you're watching us the email addresses. You can always reach out to us via email, Jonny, Jonny, or Sully, Sully at redhat.com. You don't have to hit both of us. You can hit one or the other, and we always just include the other one whenever we reply. So feel free to reach out to us anytime. We love hearing from y'all. And with that, we will see you next week, where we will see the conclusion of Jonny's riveting
epic finale.
it's like a two-parter, right? This isn't Netflix. We don't release everything all at the same time, right? It's like old school TV where you got to wait till next week to get the.
That's right. It's a cliffhanger.
Yeah. So thank you all. Please don't hesitate to reach out, and we will see you all next week. I'm gonna find what I got to click while you have any last words, Jonny.
Yeah. Thank you very much to everybody for all the questions. It made the stream fly by. And for any title suggestions, because I do suck at naming things, please feel free to email me and be like, hey, this is what you should actually name this. And I
won't tell your kids that.
No, well, yeah, my wife did that part. So like I still, but no, thank you very much. I appreciate it. This has been, I love all the feedback or interaction. And thanks, Pete.
Sonics was asking about the commands. I think, were you going to share a gist, or you were going to share that somehow?
Yeah, I'm going to put a gist in the show notes, and then that way you can just go and click on the link and see everything.
Okay. So yeah, if you're on YouTube, just look in the description down there, and there'll be a link to the gist.
Yep.
All right. Thanks, y'all. See you next week.
See you.